Good evening, everyone. It is time to call tonight's meeting to order. I want to welcome everyone who's in attendance today as we kick off yet another budget work session. Now, tonight is about going through the draft FY26 budget together, hearing from the staff, having a good discussion as to what's working, what needs to have more thought, and where we would maybe want to make adjustments. So the goal here for the board is to give the staff clear direction so that they can come back to us as update at our next session. Our budget work session will continue on to Tuesday, May the 27th at 4 p.m. We will not be meeting that Monday due to Memorial Day. And we also will be getting an update on the USDA project and have time for questions at the end. So, Elizabeth, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor Harker?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cooper?
Here.
Commissioner Gilligan?
Here.
Commissioner LaPiccolo?
Here.
Commissioner Oliver?
Here.
Commissioner Spiegler?
Here. Thank you. Unless there's any additions or changes to the agenda, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
We've got a motion on the floor. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to move on to the presentation of the draft FY26 recommendation budget. I'm going to turn this over to the town manager, Matt Zapp.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
We would like to begin tonight with an overview, and we've put together a PowerPoint presentation. But before we jump into that PowerPoint, I want to let the board know we have before you your bound draft budget, the recommended version. You should have a legal or 11 by 17 version of a current projects list. This is everything that we have been able to identify currently within the staff, and we'll be modifying. This will be a living document. But we wanted to put all the active projects in one spot so we could review them together, so you should have a copy of that. We also provided, in case we need to get into any direct questions, this is your line-by-line item. You would have revenue and expenses all available to you, because we know that seeing this on a terminal or trying to scroll through a handheld device or a tablet is a little bit more difficult. And when we go through this, we're going to be talking about the budget at 100,000 feet, and then we'll be coming down. What we had done here is taken originally what the staff had assembled prior to my arrival. And I want to thank every one of our department heads and our finance team for all the hard work that has come into the last few conversations that I've been a part of with you, and then leading to today. We went back and started at a zero-based budgeting approach and started with line number 1 and went all the way through the 600 plus lines of the documentation, both revenue side, and then we went through the expense side. And we took a very conservative and tactical approach on both calculations and projections of revenues, as well as what is actually needed, prioritize those expenses and place them on the expense side. So you have that we can reference. And then we also created a quick one-pager, and this one-pager you should have available to you. So, Christy, everybody has a copy of this as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this one-pager had the, if you will, large-scale purchases or additions to the budget, which may have been different from years past. It identifies what the needs are categorically in the general fund, and then it assigns the number to that with a description of the item, and then the estimated purchase cost. And then we went into the utility fund and did the same. Is it my last name? I'm so electric, I'm causing a disruption in the presentation material. There we go. And as in advance of this, as a presenter, you always have a backup to the backup. So you do have a copy of the PowerPoint that everybody will be able to see. And we printed these not because you would have any issues seeing them. It's because I would have issues seeing them. So I preferred to put them on a large-scale single piece for you in the event that there's small print. That's not about you, it's more about me. So with that being said, we wanted to jump in and have a conversation about what a proposed balanced budget could look like, effective for the period of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th of 2026. Don't want to bury the lead. For those that are in the audience and or are taxpayers, we want to let you know we're bringing forward a revenue neutral tax rate, which see a major reduction in the cost of millage or the centage of our taxes from our current 46 and then pulling that all the way down to a calculated revenue neutral rate of 28.84 cents. So we'll jump in and talk about how we got here and what we think is going to be necessary for a successful 12 months in the upcoming fiscal year. So this budget was developed with the board, all the staff members, and the community's input at our annual retreat and our subsequent budget meetings. We're working to maintain and, whenever possible, improve on our service delivery as we discussed at the last workshop session. And again, this is a property tax rate at 28.84 cents, which rolls off the tongue so smoothly. You won't forget it in the coming year. But again, this is down from our tax rate previously, which had been set at 46 cents for quite some time. And that comes from the calculation of the county's revaluation. So our revaluation period has been almost 5 years now, and that calculation point in time, the snapshot in time that the county presented when they were at our meeting here, identifies the new values effective with comparables as of January 1st, 2025. We also are proposing in the current budget before you to maintain our current water and sewer rate structure, but there is a caveat to that. We would ask that we could schedule a comprehensive rate analysis. Staff has already reached out to the North Carolina Rural Water Association. They've offered to provide us that service, and they've already sent us a request for detail. So since that process is already moving, we would love to know if that would be okay with you. So that's one thing we're going to look for on next steps or action items here tonight. So slowing it down, the primary budget and capital goals, this is really where the meat and potatoes of the budget come into play. We've talked about what is necessary looking in the rear view and what may be needed in the windshield coming forward. So the addition of 6 full-time firefighters is a critical need for the community from a safety perspective to be compliant with NFPA. We've also increased our coverage area, both inside and outside the district. There's additional new homes, there's additional new large-scale facilities in addition to residential, and there's just a generalized increase of call volume. Now, from 2020 to 2025, the call volume has virtually doubled. So you've gone from around 740 calls to almost 1,600 calls annually. We don't believe that that's going to be a blip, as it's an increase, it's continuing. So to do so, the request of firefighters would be 3 on the county side of the budget, 3 on the town side of the budget, and you would see 1 full personal shift. That means 1 extra person at Fire Station 1 and 1 extra person at Fire Station 2, which would allow us to respond 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. We're also, as a staff, identified items that we brought forward, and we were trying to figure out what to utilize, what to cut, but we're pleased to report that in the revenue neutral rate, going at a zero-based approach, reducing some expenditures and moving some items around, we were able to identify and afford to present the purchase of a public works dump truck, which is aged, a sewer truck, a 3/4-ton truck to replace a 1-ton truck in the fire department, and 3 of the generators on a replacement list. We've gone out and secured new pricing, and we believe that we may have a very good price now on the generators, which they had been in a space holder of around $40,000, but when you're looking at the current pricing, which they can't hold for much more than 10 to 30 days, those units are just about $60,000 or a little bit less. We also heard what the board had requested. It was the development of an enterprise fund. This new Fund 14 is accounted for in your line item budget, both on the revenue side and expenses, and will be used or identified for the Beaufort Waterfront Marina projects. And so the revenue that comes in and the expenses that go out would be identified. I want to point out there's no anticipated numbers. Those line items are currently at 0, as we would theoretically take over as early as January 1. So we're going to have to look at that if you want to make any adjustments on the revenue side or expenses. It's a little bit hard to gauge, but you can always make adjustments throughout the year. Regarding one of our most key parts of our budget is the people that keep the town moving, and they're our greatest asset. So this budget includes the 3% COLA. It also includes market competitive adjustments and the salary study that the board had asked me to review, and we did with HR, and we've brought forward your $113,000 adjustment, which would be included here, which would be bringing our team members equitable in the market space, and that is based on years of service. So the big number highlights for the community and for the board is your total budget being presented tonight is systematically less than it was a year ago. But I do want to point out that a year ago, we had utilized upwards of $1.5 million of fund balance that was going to be dedicated to asphalt repairs. So that actually shows that this year's budget is less at $19,856,755 with all funds in. Breaking that out, your general fund stays stagnant, right at $14 million. Now, the new stormwater fund, which was established, is based on calculation, and there was some adjustment from the previous draft budget to the actual. And so our most calculated estimation is showing that around $180,000 coming in this year, and so then it would be allocated for $180,000 spent next year. One thing I'd like to slow down and say is we will provide a further and more detailed update on the USDA projects, but inside the stormwater fund, we have applied for and received a loan amount to do stormwater work from USDA. That's where this generative resource of the revenues coming in will help pay that payment. And again, for everyone, that payment would become effective June 1st, 2026, which would make it in this upcoming fiscal year. The utility fund staying stagnant, rate at $5.2 million. System development fees are anticipated to come in at around $125,000. And again, we've created your new waterfront fund, but we currently have those numbers held at zero. The most important number in all of what we're talking about again is bringing forward a revenue neutral tax rate to put the lowest tax burden possible on our Beaufort citizens, property holders, and tax rate payers at 28.84 cents. If you were comparing last year's rate to this year's rate, there's going to be a dramatic reduction in the actual number, but again, the average bill should be relatively the same. So when we want to talk about the average bill, I want to thank the planning department for helping today. We took the total valuation divisible by the total number of taxable payable properties, and that averages out to a new average tax value of approximately $573,000. If you take that figure and calculate out our proposed tax rate, that's going to make the average bill around $1,654, or just a few pennies less, or around $137.85 per month. What do I get for that? You get police, fire, public works, the solid waste, parks, water, sewer, stormwater, engineering, administration, planning, and inspections, all as a part rolled up into that fee. What's important is, I know there was a conversation about what are we going to do, what else might we need, what available other funds are there for us. And we want to point out that a year ago, at the conclusion of the 2024 fiscal year audit, June 30th of 24, the unassigned fund balance was $7.8 million. Now, in this current budget, there are transactions and amendments that are projected to be paid out. Now, we did budget for greater than this $1.6 million, but we think that with the revenues that are coming in, the reduction in expenses, there's going to be some safety netting there, and that the proposed number of fund balance that may be used to bring us to zero on June 30th would be right at $1.6 million, correct? Now, statutorily, the local government checks out, keeps on our finances, makes sure the LGC makes sure that we have to maintain a minimum of 8% fund balance. At our last count at the last cycle, we were nearly 51%, which is a healthy fund balance to hold. Now, we've spent some of that down. We also want you to be aware that our internal town policy is 20% holdback. So when you take out what our fund balance was, minus what we think we're going to have to spend to get to June 30th, pull back the 20%, which is our minimum requirement to hold within fund balance, that would leave this group with upwards of $3.4 million that is both available and unassigned. So that fund balance would be available to you. So if you wanted to purchase an item, if you wanted to make an investment, fix more roads, whatever it is that you want to do statutorily, know that right now the conversational number is right at $3.4 million. Any questions on fund balance? So as we go forward, we wanted to talk about here's what the budget looks like. It's balanced. It's revenue neutral. What might our next steps be? And what we would want to say is, as a staff, my office and our team that's trying to move you forward into the conversation to bring forward a budget that will be passed in June, are we clear and we have consensus and clarification that we would like to levy a tax rate that is currently budgeted at 28.84 cents, which is your revenue neutral? If that's the case, we can continue to move forward. There won't be a lot of adjustment needed in the budget. We'd also recommend that a comprehensive utility rate study is performed, because we want to tell you that we had conversation last week that was really great. We talked about that our revenues are higher than our expenses as we project to get to the end of June 30th, 2025. We may be carrying forward as close as $600,000 to the good at the end of June. That might sound like a lot until we calculate that 12 months from today, if I'm back here standing, that we have an addition of $481,000 of payments that would be drawn down that currently aren't in our debt schedule. And those payments are for your new water and the new sewer project being held and ran today. Please pardon our dust, but it's our USDA water and sewer projects. Those projects would have actually 41 payments, but a 40-year life cycle, correct? And very low interest rates, so it was an extremely strong and smart investment, but those payments are coming, the first payments would be due again June 1st of 26. So on the utility side, what we're collecting today is a healthy fund amount that is prepared to absorb that $500,000 balance of payments in this current drafted cycle. Now, if there's adjustments that can be made, I believe that rural water would help us find those adjustments, and that we would bring that information as quickly forward. So if an adjustment could be made in July or August or September, we would want to bring you that data as quickly as we can assemble it with the assistance of rural water. And as we plan out, we currently have a workshop slated for Tuesday, the day after the holiday. That's at 4:00 p.m. back in this building. We can go over any budget-related questions that you have after tonight's presentation or anything that arises. And then again, we're slated to be back for our official board meeting Monday, June 9th. We would then advertise effective tomorrow that the draft budget has been presented. It's available for inspection at Town Hall. We've also posted it online so that it would meet our statutory requirements. We'll advertise our public hearing on June 9th, and if you're in concurrence with the draft budget, you can pass it on June 9th, or you could pass it at a subsequent meeting in June. Again, just a reminder, we'd need to have a budget passed before July 1st. So those are our basic next steps. A lot of the questions that we were fielding, what's the delta or the difference between the true to the decimal revenue neutral tax rate and a rounded tax rate? The conversation piece would be, the nearest would be 29 cents. And so if the board set the revenue rate at 29 cents, it would derive around $34,000 more. But 28.84 is currently in the calculations. We would be happy to slow down, answer any questions that you have, talk about where we are with projects, talk about how we got here. If you found anything in the data that we've sent you over the last week that needs either greater clarification or we may have made a mistake, we would gladly answer it. But we went through it more than once, from top to bottom, left to right. We've utilized color coding, so on your list, the manager's column, any major changes, any dollar changes that were either recommended or adjusted up or down should be highlighted in green on the master line item sheet.
Okay. Are you ready for questions?
I'm always ready, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And if they're hard ones, Christie will take them.
Kirsty, I'll take them, okay. Well, Board, what we'll do is we'll start peppering Matt with some questions before we start getting into deciding whether revenue neutral, what that should be. So let's go ahead and go around and ask some general questions. Commissioner Spiegler, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll just start by saying thank you. I know how hard you all have worked on this, and especially this past week. So thank you, Matt and Christy, especially, and Elizabeth. This information is really great, and thank you also for adding the docs to the budget, both on the revenue side and the expense side. I don't actually have any specific questions for you.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
As I mentioned in a previous meeting, have the blessing of not having a full-time job. And I have tracked this for a long time. I am 100% in favor of the recommendation that a new manager has made on this budget.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cooper.
Fantastic job, and I know, once again, as everybody else been echoing that, you guys really been spending a lot of time on this budget. But you keep coming back to that 29 cents. I mean, you
No,
have it there.
I just showed you,
I'm
I'm
showing
just
it.
showing you that. I think what I've presented is 28.84, and we are comfortable there, but I
You're
just want.
comfortable?
Yes, so I've had that question from members of the council, what was the difference, and I just wanted you to know.
Okay, I was just wondering why I was in the presentation, so I didn't know if you were asking us to weigh that.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, once again, thanks, you guys have been doing a great job.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
Thank you, Matt, for making this so clear. I don't have any questions.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Lo Piccolo?
Appreciate all the work you did. I guess to have the public understand the utility fund debt service and explain, I guess, how the debt service will be increasing over time. Can you talk to our debt service to maturity and how that's going to basically be changing over time, and how maybe we may be able to kind of address this at a future date with rates? Because as we all know, the sewer rates in the community are considerably higher, and we're working on that. So if you have to be able to
Absolutely.
speak to that.
I could speak to it verbally. We don't have any presentation material tonight, but what we would do in the future is we would show currently, for example, inside of this fiscal year budget, there is one indebted payment that I believe was established in 2006 that would be falling off in this cycle. That would result in a plus $30,000 savings next year. So I believe the last payment, which is oftentimes smaller than the traditional first 19 of a 20-year note or 39 of a 40-year note. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to see a drop-off of approximately $37,000. And so that would be in this particular cycle. So in the budget today, there's a 20-year note that has its final payment. Then there's another one that was established in 2008 and another one that was established in 2009, and those would be coming to maturity, if I'm not mistaken, in fiscal year 2029. And if that's the case, there is an option for us. We've talked about what is the interest rate that you're currently paying on the indebtedness, and that's around 2.2%. And then you have to ask yourself the question, if we're holding $5 million in reserve and we're doing a good job of investing our money, are we getting greater than 3% return? And currently today you are. If we would have had this conversation 36 months ago, the interest rate may not have been as favorable. So you're in a position where we don't want to get into interest arbitrage where you're paying off a note early but losing revenue. But you'll get to a place where we can show a snapshot in time. And what I would like us to do is create a very robust capital improvement plan, show that capital improvement plan against an indebtedness payout chart, and then that will show you what you currently owe today, what you may owe in 36 months, what you may owe in 60 months. And we may have some decisions to make if we have a strong and healthy fund balance, is what we do in utilities. Do you want to pay a note 2 or 3 off early? And when you do that, your allocation annually can come down. If your allocation annually comes down, there may be more threshold or buoyancy to adjust your rates. But you also need to be thinking out and planning ahead for what's your next major project. Is it attacking I&I? Is it spending more money on a new water facility? Is it upgrading a system or extending a line? So we would ask staff to be thinking so forwardly that you would be able to identify what that future looks like. And anyone that has done that in forecasting, it's relatively easy to tell you what the next 12 months looks like. It gets a little bit harder at 36, but outside of that 60-month period, you really need to have a policy that says fire hydrants last 15 years or fire hydrants last 20 years. And so I've asked staff that granular. How many fire hydrants are in the system? What's the age of the fire hydrants? What's the policy for cycling those hydrants? What's the current cost of a hydrant? So currently today, the actual physical from the riser up to the hydrant is right around $4,000 in material. If you utilize an outside contractor, the total cost is plus or minus $12,000 for replacement. Now, if our internal team has the capacity to change that hydrant, you can drive those costs down. The difficulty, and this is just for exercise purposes, how much will a fire hydrant cost us in 2035? That's what we have to say when predicting out what that capital improvement plan looks like and making sure we're collecting enough and fixing enough year over year so you don't have a major swing where we're going to see a 15 or 20 or 30% rate adjustment. So that's why I believe that with rural water, their expertise and their ability to help us, usually at no cost, there's minimal travel involved, that you can get a great product. And then they can help us compare to what other communities that are like-sized, communities that are larger and smaller, if there's any best management practices we could utilize, we would really lean heavily on our colleagues at Rural Water because that's what they spend their day doing, and that's how they're funded, is to help us. So if that answers it in a very high level, we will bring that granular detail forward. There will be more questions at first than there will be answers because that's what we as a team are going to have to think through, but we will be dedicating some time to that conversation. It's a big one. It's not as simple. It's a complex answer, but you want a healthy system, charging the least amount in rates to maintain what you currently have and prepare for its future replacement over time.
All of the above.
Another question. Obviously, we're paying attention to detail and specifics, and I appreciate creating that line item for the docks in the community. At what point do you think we will start breaking that down for expenses and revenue? Well, why not do that now? Why not start putting that in there to show the expenses that's going to incur? If we don't have a specific revenue number, we can wait till later on, but to create that at this point, at what point would you want to create that then?
That's a good question for me. I'm afraid I'm not probably the most up to speed to answer that, and I would love to. I can give you the global and then may call on our BWOOF committee members to expand, but we're in a conversational situation where the community is going to need to make a decision about management of that extremely important and beautiful asset. And the facts that I have are that that asset doesn't transfer back to our stewardship until January 1. And so we do have some time. The budget itself is a living, breathing document. You're fully authorized to adjust it and change it at any time. So I would suggest that if we can get through the conversation about who the management company is, we've had a lot of conversation about fuel farms and costs associated. As we firm those pieces of the puzzle up, then that's when I think we would be most appropriately able to adjust a budget. Now, if I'm speaking out of turn or out of line, I would call on our two commissioners to help me there. But that's the little bit of a very beautiful option that we have coming down the line.
I think Matt said that really well, Commissioner LaPiccolo. Only thing I might add is consider, as he said, we're having conversations right now with candidates to manage the docks, and they have a lot of experience as well in setting those budgets. They've done that before, so they will be able to provide a lot of expertise as we are writing that budget. And so I think Matt hit it on the head. Give us a little bit more time to finish those conversations.
If I were doing the thumb wag, and I don't mean to cut you off if you have more to share, I would say if we could engage this conversation early fall, we would know more by then. And so onboarding, making a selection, going through the process, making a selection, developing a contract, and onboarding that management team, and then giving them some time to review all that we have, we would definitely want to have this adjustment. If you want to change numbers, I would say at the start of the year at the latest. And that gives us a good window of time. Would be what we would consider second quarter of our fiscal budget or fourth quarter of the calendar year would be the most appropriate and probably the most accurate time frame. We could put space holders in there, but I think we would want to lean on that team that would be helping us manage. And I would say to you, after 1 year of operation, based on what we're requesting for transparency and reporting and communication to the public, we'll have a much better handle after 1 year of complete operation. And I would define that 1 year as after 2026 comes to a close from January 1st to December 31st, although it's not on a fiscal year cycle, 1 year of clean operation, and we'll have a much stronger perspective going forward.
And then finally, last but not least, obviously the roads in the community is on everyone's mind.
Yes, sir.
The paving of the roads. As we all know, with the USDA grant that we received, the projections and the estimates that we had for completion of the entire project was approximately $30 million or so, and that's what the grant that was received. As we know, that took quite a bit of time. many years for that to come to fruition because of getting the bonding done and the bidding and so forth. And since that time with inflation, the amount for that project was raised, right? So I think we had about $1.5 million shortfall. Is that correct?
There's a lot there that I can answer, but I'll wait for you to complete your
ahead.
question.
So because of the fact of inflation, that we ended up being a bit behind in the amount of money that we had for that. So if you can speak to that and what's being done in the community in regarding the budget towards paving.
Sure. I may be jumping ahead in the agenda and maybe giving you more information that is in a USDA update, if that's okay, and we can come back to that if you need further expansion. But the good news that we wanted to share is that potentially asphalt patching right outside of this building may be occurring as early as tomorrow morning, effective at 9:00 a.m. So if you're traversing through this area, please be aware that there may be road closures and asphalt patching occurring. We've worked, I want to say first and foremost, publicly, thank you to Greg Mishaw, who I believe helped lift this project to where it was taking off prior to his retirement. Thank you to Sam Bell, who grabbed it and tried to work through all the nuances over the last 9 or 10 months. But we realized, based on the project list, that there's a whole lot happening in Beaufort. And so what we had to do, I think it was a good move, and I hope you would agree, is we were able to find Mr. Mishaw on retirement, and we secured his services, but he's willing to work part-time, which was supposed to be 3 days a week, has been as many as 7 days a week, was supposed to be 20 hours a week, and he's been putting in a tremendous amount of time to help us get a better handle on these rising costs associated with USDA. To give you a briefing and report tonight, we have 2 contractors handling 3 projects, Sunland and TA Loving. And Sunland has, we've made a determination that Sunland may be best to utilize dedication of their workforces to focus on the stormwater project to get it complete before the USDA extended deadline. And we want to thank Rick Williford and his team at Sunland for focusing in on that area. We also want to thank TA Loving, who said that they're willing to take both the water and sewer projects and then run with them concurrently, which I believe will be much better for the outcome, for timing, because there are some conflicts where there's a portion of the project that is water, a portion of the project that is sewer, and a portion of the project that is stormwater that may be all on the same street at the same time, which is why that you're seeing there's such a delay right here on Broad, for example, or down at March. So when you see those conflicts occurring, we're trying to work through that. And we appreciate, and I can't stress enough, the patience of the property owners and the travelers that are in those zones. But it's very clear to tell you, you are correct, there's been a rise in costs. There's also the amount of underground unknowns, and that's with a historic and age system. And that there's some of that to be expected, but we have encountered some problems. Additionally, now we're into the timing of it's the season, and our peak guests and tourism is going to be kicking off here this weekend, and we had tried very hard and advocated for a lot of these asphalt patches to be completed before Memorial Day. Despite our best efforts in the push, there's going to be some patching that starts as early as tomorrow, but it will continue on, obviously, after the holiday. So there is the conversation about roadway patching and edge-to-edge, what we call full repair or edge-to-edge repave. And then, unfortunately, I need to make sure nobody's going to get upset behind me. Leveling that expectation. The budget currently calls for patching, not full edge-to-edge replacement. The low side cost on edge-to-edge replacement in the construction zone alone, in all the roads that have been disturbed by USDA work, the low side cost is $6 million. And that potential could creep as high as $10 million, depending upon what specific repairs need to occur inside of that box. Again, low side 6, high side is 10. So what we're trying to say is we really need to have a plan going forward for this full replacement when you go edge to edge on the pave. Because if I'm living on a street that's been disrupted or torn up for 6 months, I'm very practically assured that I think when this is all said and done, I'm going to have a nice smooth road. And I think that that's what a majority of the public is going to think, and your phones and emails and texts will probably result in. But the reality is the current project is budgeted to patch those cuts. Some of our roads are extremely wide, and they're gonna obviously demand greater cost than a standard 22-foot wide curb and gutter style street. In addition to that, asphalt prices are moving, but when you get into these small projects, and I wanna say that categorically ours is still a small project, the large paving companies are gonna be focused on highway-style projects, big dollar projects where they pave at night. So getting somebody back here before the fall is going to be a much lower probability. They're gonna make, the term we use in ag and farm, you're gonna make hay when you can make hay, and then they're gonna come back to make small repairs and projects, small city jobs. They usually do that November and December. So we had a window in the spring, we have a window in the fall, not saying that we couldn't go out to bid. The bigger question is, if we brought together a massive paving project, how do we want to fund it? I think the intent was to borrow another tranche of money and pay a payment. That's what has been explained to me. So I'll pause there. Has that answered your first set of questions? And I
Yes.
would look for some feedback if you want us to do anything differently as we move forward in completing the USDA projects, specific to a large-scale asphalt pavement plan.
I appreciate that. I just wanted that laid out for the public to understand and to hear. I didn't have the numbers that you have in front of me, but I knew that was going to
It's
be
tough.
a big number.
It could be a bumpy summer. And we want to make sure that whatever we can do, that it's clean, that whenever a patch can be made, it should be made. And I want to be very clear that our staff, both full-time and our now part-time USDA project lead, are very clearly articulating that to our contractors.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Matt? Now, I did pose a question to you, and I wasn't quite sure if you had an opportunity to take a look into it when it comes down to having money for paving out of the utility fund.
That's a great question. I haven't gotten a definitive answer back, but I can answer the mayor with the best knowledge that I do know. And can I reframe the question to make sure I get it
Please.
correctly? We have a $5 million fund balance in utilities. The question is, can we legally utilize dollars within the utility fund to make repairs to the roadway surfaces that were disrupted by utility repairs? The general rule should be yes, but what we never want to do is make a commitment to something that we haven't vetted. So we're vetting that with our attorney and our School of Government, resources, both on the legal and the utility side, and then we will report back. And I would hope to have that answer no later than Tuesday, but I won't want to speak too far outside of school on that. But that is another option for us, that we are making major investments in the community's infrastructure, and those underground repairs have disturbed the ground level asphalt, and can we legally use those funds?
Okay, appreciate you looking
Yes,
into
ma'am.
that. All right, unless there's any further detailed questions for Matt, the staff has some requests from us as a board to come up with a consensus of some items. And we have sent the staff back to say revenue neutral is what we were looking for. As a consensus, is that where the staff would like to stay at revenue neutral for this particular budget? At the 2884.
Subject to a public hearing, which is scheduled, I'm prepared to make a motion on that. But if you prefer to do it as consensus, I'm fine with that, Mayor.
If you're looking at me, Mayor, I would want to just confirm with the board, if there's a consensus to leave it, we would leave it and make no adjustments. We are comfortable where we presented, and I think we'll have a good fiscal policy.
Okay,
Consensus?
consensus? You're good with the revenue neutral as presented by the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you've got a consensus on that one. You can check that box. And then the next thing you're looking for is that we're going to maintain the current sewer and water rates, but the caveat would be that you would do a comprehensive rate analysis with the North Carolina Rural Water Association. So I guess you're looking for two consensus, really.
Yes, ma'am, unless there's an objection to that, we as a staff would move forward, but we wanted to make sure we had the blessing of the board before engaging in that analysis.
Okay,
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
No problem.
all righty. let's see. Seems like everybody went through everything else. It's going smoother than I had thought. But unless there's anything else that you wish to ask of Matt, I think those are the two asks that you want
That's
to
it,
take
yes,
away from
ma'am.
us tonight.
And we wanted to give you the update on USDA, and you have more details under item 2 on your agenda, but I believe we've covered it.
All righty,
If you have any questions either about the budget or USDA, we'll do our very best to field them though.
okay. Considering we're ready to move on to the next item of the USDA project update, and if you have everything you need, you can carry
I
on.
do, thank you.
Okay.
And I've already provided you the update, so unless you have any further questions, gladly treat you to supper.
Okay. Any questions about the USDA update?
Yeah, sure one.
Yes, sure.
I know we were, or the subcontractors were kind of way behind on completion. And it sounds like, you know, there's been a number of things that have been done to make that situation better. Do you have confidence that?
I can
'Cause
answer you.
there's
Now,
gonna be
whether
a
I have
significant
confidence
improvement.
is a different question. So what we've done is the contractors and the resources available to them, in their defense, the market is really difficult now, not just in the labor pool, but also in materials. But what we wanted to stress was to our contractors that to be 14% complete on a project that was supposed to sunset in October is well behind the schedule. So our team has worked with both TA Loving and Sunland, and I believe that the plan we have going forward is achievable. It would be too early for me to share a confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10. The results will determine. So where we are today is stopping the water project with our current contractor and transitioning at a break point the balance of that contract to TA Loving. And so Sunland is going to come to a stop. They're going to then reallocate all their forces to the stormwater project. And TA Loving has teams that will run in tandem simultaneously, running both sewer and water. I'm much more confident today and believe that it's a good solution for both the vendors and for the community.
Thank you.
And the fact that we were fortunate enough to receive the services of a historically experienced team member on a part-time basis who's probably given more than a part-time effort has really allowed one person to focus on that project, and that is partially the key. And when you're the only engineer focused on 15 projects, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So I think this is a twofold win with Greg on the USDA projects and Sam handling all the other projects that are on the list. Both, the tides will rise in both accords.
Yeah, awesome.
We'll continuously report, and if you don't mind, you don't have to respond to them all, but we're going to give you updates electronically, just like we did today, that paving may begin in this particular area, because some folks may or may not be checking social media, and we're doing everything we can to keep the community informed. There will be a lot of road closures at X and Y, street paving to come, water testing, things like that.
So that was actually going to be my question, Matt. You kind of already answered it. I just wanted to know how we're continuing to keep the public engaged and make sure they're aware of this. I think you pretty much answered it.
We're trying, so if there's a different way that somebody needs to be notified, these are the tools that currently are being utilized. If there's an emergency water shutoff that needs to occur, door hangers were being placed, but we're asking the questions, were the door hangers put on your front door, side, or the back door? Because sometimes you might not be using the front door. If you've come home at 5:30 and you're in your home for the evening, and we put a front door hanger on at 6:30 and you didn't leave, and you get up to take a shower at 8 and we shut your water off, what we're also doing is trying to post that information socially. Because I'm sure no one in our community rolls out of bed and grabs their telephone. I sure hope they're not doing that, but if they are and they're checking social media, we want to warn you before you get in the shower and you're on this section of the street. So we're utilizing and leveraging postings at all of our public outposts, all of our personal or all of our professional social media outlets, and then we're still doing the whole door-to-door, person-to-person conversationally. So if there's something else we could be doing, people can always call town hall. We're grabbing the telephone, answering questions. And one thing that we're trying to do is both internal and external communication. And I want to applaud our PIO for trying to make sure everybody on staff inside of our house knows what's occurring outside. And so you're getting internal pushes, external pushes. But with all the noise in the environment in the world, people are still getting caught off guard, and we want to say we don't want that to happen, and if there's a different way that we could be notifying folks, we're going to try to do it. And that leads to a little bit of our conversation in the budget. Text on demand is a very helpful service where someone can sign up for and receive those pushes. We were not going to bombard them. You're not going to have us requesting it's time to update the warranty on your 2010 Honda. We're not that kind of a crowd. But we would send out a blast. If you signed up and you want to receive a text message about emergency weather, or you want to receive a text message about upcoming events, and so we want to talk through how we're going to do that and become more of a push instead of a pull environment. That's all in process, and we'll be bringing forward solutions that continue, correct? So if we already have a magic bullet over there, you're making eye contact, so. And so communicating and making sure people can do it, those are all options. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anything about that that we want to encourage others to do, remind them of a sign up? Is there anything that I may be missing? And again, I apologize because.
No,
Okay.
you'll probably see, especially, not probably, but you'll definitely see, especially with hurricane season starting, the blast for people to sign up. Our program that we use is Regroup.
Right.
That has historically been used for weather notifications and emergencies. There is an aspect of it where we can target in a specific location and it can text people who signed up from that area.
Mhm.
So that's something we're working to hone in on a little bit.
And that may lead us to the opportunity to ask the community, what ways are you getting our information, and trying to go to the people and ask folks, how can we better communicate to you? Because there's a conversation here that for the first time in history, 5 generations of people are living and working together, and there's a dramatic difference across the spectrum of the 5 generations. And we want to be a privy to that, both on the entry-level early adapters to our most senior veterans that are trying to figure out how we're communicating. So we're going to continue to do utility bill inserts. We're going to continue to do social media posts. We've added a sunshine blast that if you want mid-month notifications, we're trying to do that electronically as well. But again, as the world shifts, there's been a lot of push to get away from paper and more to digital, but there's still a delicate balance and need for both. And if you see somebody coming to your door with a little note hanger, it's usually probably going to be about water right now. So try to read it if you can.
I hope I don't
Be
see
helpful.
that person. I like my water.
That's right. Everybody does. Any other final questions? Would be glad to answer them or try to help better prepare you for the 27th.
Anything that the board would like to go ahead and talk about tonight? Of course, you can always email any kind of questions and follow-up questions to the staff and to Matt. But right now, anything that pops up? No USDA questions? Well, I want to thank you and the staff for going through this process. I know it was arduous, but you handled it very, very well. You look like ducks, actually, on water, smooth on top and working real hard on the bottom. But I also like to thank the commissioners for doing their job and going into those great details and doing the work for the citizens. So that was also a great push from you guys as well. Giving the staff clear direction is very, very helpful. And I hope that we will be able to provide that for you as we prepare for our meeting on the 27th. Any other staff comments that you would like to, staff has any other comments that they would like to make?
I'll allow staff to share what they want to, but I would also ask you if you feel comfortable with this balanced revenue neutral budget that has met all the requirements. We love visiting with you a lot. Not sure if we need to visit on Tuesday, so that is totally up to you. And if there's nothing more pressing that comes, and we would converse with the mayor about that, if an item needs approval or consideration, you may not actually need to have the 27th meeting if you feel good about where we're going, and we can allow the community to review the budget and then have our public hearing on June 9th, but that is completely up to the board.
That would give the public a little bit more time to review the budget if we are feeling good with where we are right now.
I'm good.
You fine with that?
I'm
So
good.
you want a motion to go ahead and just move forward with this?
No, my request would be if you believe that the revenue neutral budget is healthy and there's not a lot of additional dialogue or changes that you'd like to make, that there's probably not anything really pressing on the 27th, and you could forego that final budget conversation. We could then the public is invited still and will be advertised to share opinions, ideas, and concerns on June 9th. So the question on the floor is, would you like to meet on Tuesday the 27th, or would you like to cancel Tuesday the 27th?
We can cancel.
Cancel? All right, cancel. It looks like we can forego that meeting. Great job.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it. And we'll put that out as well.
All right. Enjoy your long Memorial Day weekend. Spend money in town. All right, unless there's no staff comments, and it seems like we've already, anybody? Okay, you guys are doing a great job. So if that's all that we have, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you.
And for those the audience that's here, if you want, we're going to stay. I'll answer
50
any
minutes?
questions. We'll
We did a
gladly
meeting in
provide you
50
data.
minutes.